Usually when we talk about seeing something clearly, there is a pretty binary expectation.
Right.
Like you put on your glasses and the blurry text gets sharp, or, the doctor says you have 20/20 vision.
Yeah, it's measurable. You either see it or you don't.
Yeah, well, wait. I mean, you clean a dirty window and suddenly you can see the street outside, right?
It's empirical. I
Ugh.
really like things to be categorical like that with undeniable, visible proof that our faculties are working.
But then you step into the realm of spherical sight and suddenly those lenses just, they stop working.
Oh, completely.
We're looking at a landscape that is honestly quite murky. The rules of physical sight just do not apply at all.
No, they don't.
So, welcome to Reformed Thinking. This is a deep dive where we take theological texts, historical sources, and our own notes, and we just unpack the concepts that shape our understanding of faith.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Today, our mission is to analyze a very specific excerpt. We're looking at chapter 13 of John Owen's classic work, The Glory of Christ.
A heavy hitter for sure.
Oh, yeah. We are going to unpack the distinct differences between seeing Christ's glory through faith in our current world versus seeing it directly by sight in heaven.
What's really fascinating here is the context of when Owen actually wrote this.
Right, his personal situation.
Yeah, because he was this towering intellect in 17th century England, a man who lived through, civil wars, plagues, massive political upheaval.
It's a chaotic time.
Unbelievably chaotic.
Yeah.
But he wrote The Glory of Christ at the very end of his life. He was literally dying.
Wow.
So this is not some academic ivory tower theorizing.
Right, it's not hypothetical for him.
No, it's a man standing right on the threshold of eternity, trying to articulate the frustrating, beautiful, and honestly painful reality of trying to see God while you're still stuck in a broken world.
Yeah.
He doesn't start with this triumphant, easy view of faith. He starts with a gritty, realistic acknowledgement of our limitations.
Which is why I want to ask you, the listener, a question right out of the gate here. Do you ever feel spiritually dry?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you ever struggle to maintain a clear view of your faith amid a chaotic world or, a demanding job or just the relentless noise of modern life?
Because if you do, this deep dive is for you.
100%. Owen is addressing that specific feeling of frustration. He sets the stage by explaining that faith in this life is, by its very nature, imperfect.
Yeah, he uses a striking analogy right at the beginning. He says, faith is like having weak eyes and trying to look directly at the sun and its beauty.
Staring at the physical sun is, it's physically agonizing.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Your eyes water, you squint, your vision blurs, and eventually this self-preservation instinct kicks in and you just have to look away.
Right. The sheer brilliance of the object totally overwhelms the weakness of the organ trying to perceive it.
That makes total sense.
And Owen applies this directly to our spiritual condition. The glory of Christ is infinite. It is immense and brilliant.
And we are, well, finite.
Exactly. Our current capacity for faith, residing in finite, fallen human minds, is just too weak to take it all in constantly. We see it imperfectly. And sometimes the slightest interposition takes it quite out of our sight.
Let's unpack that a bit. So we have this inherent weakness. Our spiritual eyes are squinting, constantly watering. We can only catch glimpses before we have to look away.
Right.
But from that inherent weakness, the text moves to something that feels much more intentional and honestly a bit jarring.
Oh, for sure.
Owen argues that it isn't just our weak eyes causing the problem. Sometimes there's an intentional divine action that makes seeing Christ even harder. He introduces this concept of divine hiding.
Yeah, this raises a huge question about the nature of God's interaction with believers. Owen points out that while we are in this life, Christ sometimes chooses, in his sovereign wisdom, to withdraw.
He hides himself.
He hides himself. Our minds fall into clouds and darkness. Faith is at a loss.
Wow.
We might seek him, but we can't find him. It is a period of spiritual desertion that many historical theologians have actually documented.
And the text brings in some heavy biblical citations to back this up. It points to Job chapter 23.
Oh yeah, Job.
Job is in absolute agony, having lost everything, his family, his wealth, his health. But his biggest complaint in that chapter is not the physical pain.
No, it's the silence.
Right. He says he goes forward, but God isn't there. He goes backward, but cannot perceive him. He checks the left hand, he checks the right hand, and there's just nothing. Job is mapping out the geography of spiritual abandonment.
The psychological weight of that passage is massive. Job is not some unbeliever shaking his fist at the sky. He is a faithful man who suddenly finds the heavens made of brass.
Yeah.
And it isn't just Job. The text references Isaiah 45, where the prophet boldly declares to God, "Verily thou art a God that hidest thyself."
That's a strong statement.
Very. Then there's the spouse in the Song of Solomon, specifically in chapters 3 and 5, constantly bemoaning that her beloved has withdrawn.
She's searching the streets.
Right? Searching everywhere, feeling that intense emotional ache of absence. And Owen notes a critical detail here. He says, men might retain their doctrinal knowledge during this time.
Oh, that's interesting. So they still know the theological facts.
They can still pass a theology exam,
Yeah.
sure. But the cheerful, refreshing view of his glory, that's gone.
I have an analogy for that. It feels like trying to tune into a radio station on a long road trip.
Okay, I like that.
You're driving through the mountains, the music is crystal clear, you're singing along, and then suddenly, for no apparent reason, you lose the signal.
Just static.
Right. You're just listening to static. You keep fiddling with the dial, hitting the seek button, trying to get the signal back, but the broadcaster has lowered the transmission. It's just white noise.
Yeah.
So why would a loving savior intentionally hide his face and leave a believer in the static?
Well, your radio analogy captures the frustration really well, but we need to, refine the motive behind it.
Okay, hit me.
The broadcaster in your scenario might just have a weak tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Christ's withdrawal is intentional and purposeful.
It feels contradictory to a loving relationship, though, on the surface.
It does. We assume love means constant, uninterrupted comfort. But Owen provides a specific reason for this withdrawal, showing it isn't some arbitrary act of cruelty. It's designed to awaken believers from woeful sloth and negligence.
Sloth. That's a heavy word and maybe a bit misunderstood today.
Yeah, probably.
When I hear sloth, I think of someone sleeping until noon on a Tuesday, surrounded by empty pizza boxes.
Right, that's the physical caricature. But spiritual sloth is far more insidious. Owen points out that believers often sleep when they should be exercising their faith.
Oh, so we get lazy.
Exactly. Our hearts might value Christ in theory, but in practice, in our daily meditations, our prayers, and our conscious thoughts, we grow lazy. We stop putting in the effort to maintain that spiritual sight.
We start taking the clear radio signal for granted.
Yes. And God knows that those who have experienced His gracious presence cannot bear the sense of His absence. So He uses that withdrawal as an alarm clock.
He steps back, so we will step up.
Precisely. Although an alarm clock is almost too mechanical. It's more like, think of a parent who realizes their child has stopped paying attention in a crowded market.
Oh, man. Panic.
Right. The parent might step behind a pillar just out of sight. The moment the child looks up and realizes the parent is gone, panic sets in, followed by a frantic, earnest search.
That is a great visual.
Upon the discovery of his absence, believers are stirred up to a diligent, restless search. They start mourning their iniquity and seeking him early. The withdrawal produces an exercise of faith and love.
Even if it's mostly expressed in sighs and groans.
Yeah, which Owen says is highly acceptable to God.
The text uses a really cool illustration here to explain how this happens. It brings up the parable of Ahab's prisoner from the prophet in 1 Kings chapter 20.
Oh, right, the guard.
Yeah, the prophet tells King Ahab a story about a man in a battle who was handed a prisoner of war to guard. The commander tells the guard, "Keep this man. If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life."
High stakes.
Very. But the guard offers this terrible excuse. He says, "While I was busy here and there, he was gone."
No.
And Owen applies this directly to our relationship with Christ. Christ commits his presence to us, and we ought to carefully keep it. But we get busy here and there.
That phrase is so convicting.
I know, busy here and there. It hits hard for the modern era. It isn't that we are actively rebelling. We aren't shouting defiance at the heavens. We're just busy.
Distracted by emails, chores, entertainment.
Endless smartphone notifications.
Driving kids to soccer practice, paying bills. We're busy here and there. And in that constant low-level hum of distraction, the spiritual presence slips away.
Yeah.
But Owen calls this rebuke a sanctified correction for our recovery.
Which is a brilliant way of framing the static. The static on the radio is not a final judgment. It's an invitation to pull the car over, check your receiver, and realign your antenna.
Yes, the absence creates a hunger that the presence had stopped satisfying due to our own apathy.
So after establishing the reasons behind the withdrawal, I guess the logical next step is diagnosing the condition.
Right.
How can you actually tell when he has withdrawn from you? How do you know it isn't just a bad mood or, a lack of sleep or a stressful week at work? What's the first objective sign of his absence?
Owen answers this by looking at the effects of Christ's presence. To know he is absent, we must look at what ceases when he leaves.
Okay.
The very first symptom is loss of life, vigor, and the effectual acting of all grace in us.
Let's clarify that terminology, the effectual acting of all grace. That's a very dense 17th century Puritan way of speaking.
It is a bit of a mouthful.
What does that look like on a Tuesday morning?
It means the spiritual energy just drains out of your actions. You might still be doing the right things, but the internal engine powering them is gone. The text draws on 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. It explains that beholding Christ in the gospel directly causes believers to grow into his image.
Okay, so looking at him changes us.
Right. While by faith we contemplate his glory, all grace thrives and flourishes in us. This contemplation preserves our souls in a holy frame. It keeps love, patience, kindness, and delight in continual exercise.
So the act of beholding, the actual fixing of the mind on him is the engine.
It's the source of the vitality. It actively works conformity to Christ within us. When that view stops, the growth stops.
Wow.
All the doctrinal knowledge we've accumulated becomes useless information without that active contemplation. You can know the confession of faith backwards and forwards, but if you are not beholding his glory, you won't have the vitality to live it out.
Owen uses a great illustration of the seasons here. He says, if the weather grows cold, herbs and plants wither, and the frost begins to bind up the earth, all men grant that the sun is withdrawn.
Yeah, the winter analogy.
Right. In the same way, when a believer's heart grows cold, frozen, and lifeless in spiritual duties, it is absolute proof the sun has withdrawn.
The winter analogy is brilliant because it captures the outward appearance versus internal reality. Think about an oak tree in January.
Okay.
It's still technically an oak tree. It has the trunk, the branches, the structure, but the sap has retreated to the roots. It's barren. It lacks life and growth.
Just a skeleton of a tree.
Exactly. When we find ourselves going through the motions of faith, reading the Bible out of habit, praying empty words, attending a Sunday service, but our hearts are frozen, rigid, and lifeless, we are experiencing spiritual winter.
We aren't beholding his glory.
No, we have the structure of religion, but the sap is gone.
And here's where the text takes a sudden turn into a massive historical and theological dispute. Owen starts talking about physical images.
Yes, he does.
Crucifixes, paintings, representations of Christ. He brings this up right in the middle of talking about spiritual deadness.
This digression is core to his argument, actually, and it's a major tenet of Reformed theology. He argues that because carnal men, meaning people driven by purely natural, flesh-driven instincts, lack the ability to behold Christ spiritually, they invent physical substitutes.
Ah, a workaround.
Right. Since they can't experience the spiritual mystery of the gospel or feel any internal change from it, they provide various physical supplies in its place to satisfy their religious urges.
He mentions some extreme examples, too. People using questionable means to make an appearance of wounds on their hands and feet, pretending to be wholly conformed to his image, the stigmata.
Yes. And he asserts that these physical images stir up flesh-driven affections and superstitions, not actual evangelical grace.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate and push back here because this is a massive point of contention even today.
Sure, go ahead.
What is so wrong with using a physical visual aid if it helps someone feel closer to God? Let's say a person goes to an art museum, looks at a brilliant, heartbreaking Renaissance painting of the crucifixion, and they are moved to tears. They feel a rush of sorrow for their sins and a rush of love for Jesus. Why does Owen reject this so strongly?
It all goes back to his premise about the nature of true spiritual sight. Owen states that an imaginary Christ will only affect imaginary grace.
Imaginary grace. That is a stinging, almost offensive critique to someone having that emotional experience.
It is sharp, but it's logically consistent with his theological framework. When you look at a painting or a physical object, your natural human senses are stimulated.
Right, you're seeing a sad image.
You might feel sorrow, pity, awe, or even a sense of majesty. But those are purely natural human emotions reacting to a sad or beautiful visual stimulus. You'd feel a similar natural emotion watching a tragic movie or listening to a haunting piece of instrumental music.
Oh, I see.
Owen argues that this is fundamentally different from the spiritual exercise of grace.
So he's saying, I am basically crying at a movie. I feel a real emotion, but I mistake that natural psychological reaction for supernatural growth.
Spot on. The mind is affected, but by an idol. Owen uses an obscure Old Testament reference here to drive the point home.
Oh, the David and McCall story.
Yes, he brings up the story of David fleeing from King Saul.
Yeah.
David's wife, Michal, puts a bolster of goat's hair in the bed, covers it with clothes, to trick Saul's guards into thinking David is sick in bed.
Right.
Owen says there is a vast difference between the actual living person of David and an image made of a bolster of goat's hair, even if one is laid in the exact place of the other and fools the onlookers for a moment.
So a painting of Jesus, no matter how beautifully crafted, is like a goat's hair dummy in the bed.
That is his argument. You might put the image in the place of Christ, and it might divert your thoughts momentarily, but it is not him.
Wow.
Furthermore, he argues these physical objects actively divert the minds of men from true faith. They provide a false satisfaction. Their natural affections cleave to their physical idols instead of doing the hard work of seeking the living Christ proposed in the gospel.
It's a bypass. Instead of doing the strenuous, exhausting spiritual work of contemplating Christ by faith, which we already established is difficult, like squinting at the sun, we take the easy route.
Exactly.
We look at a physical object, get a quick emotional hit of pity or awe, check the box of feeling religious, and think we have achieved spiritual communion.
That is the danger of the counterfeit. It requires a specific spiritual discernment to tell the difference between the working of natural emotions toward spiritual objects through physical means and the genuine supernatural exercise of grace.
Right.
If you rely on the goat's hair dummy, you will eventually starve to death spiritually because a dummy cannot feed you.
Okay, so if we realize we're in a spiritual winter, our leaves are dropping, our graces are withering, and we know we cannot rely on physical shortcuts or transient emotional hits to warm us up, what is the remedy?
Yeah, how do we thaw out?
Right, how do we thaw out the frozen ground of our hearts?
The only cure for this spiritual deadness is a fresh, constant contemplation of Christ by faith. Owen points out a common mistake people make here.
Which is what?
When they feel spiritually dead, they try to fix the problem by multiplying outward duties. They add more tasks to their religious to-do list, read 3 chapters instead of 1, volunteer for another committee.
Try harder, do more.
Yes, but Owen says that is like a sick man choosing to pine away with useless temporary distractions rather than taking the known approved medicine.
The medicine being the internal exercise of faith.
Yes, he points directly to John chapter 15, verses 4 and 5. Abide in me and I in you. The remedy is to come to Christ in the actual conscious exercise of faith to receive life more abundantly.
This is an active thing.
Very active. He draws a vital distinction between coming to Christ initially at conversion to receive the principle of spiritual life and coming to him continuously, every single day, to receive the supplies of grace that keep our souls healthy and vigorous.
We acknowledge the Holy Spirit is the one doing the actual renewing work, but faith is the channel.
Correct.
The text mentions that it is in the exercise of faith that the Holy Spirit puts forth his renewing strength. So you cannot just sit around waiting for spiritual lightning to strike while you watch television.
Definitely not.
You have to actively fix your mind on the glory of Christ as revealed in the gospel. You have to tune the radio dial intentionally.
That is the core of it.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the next symptom. We have talked about the loss of internal grace, the withering of the plant, the loss of vitality. Now the conversation shifts to the second major sign of his absence, the loss of internal joy and peace.
The text calls these the royal consolations. I love that phrasing. When Christ is near, what does he bring with him?
Owen calls them the royal train of his graces. Think of an ancient king visiting a city.
Okay.
He doesn't arrive alone in peasant clothes. He arrives with a royal train, an entourage bringing gifts, feasts, security, and celebration. When Christ makes a near approach to a human soul, he brings spiritual refreshment, peace, consolation, and joy.
That's beautiful.
He references Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, where Christ promises to come in and sup with the believer. This supping, this dining together, represents the communication of these supernatural refreshments.
So true faith isn't just a stoic, gritting your teeth kind of endurance. There's supposed to be actual felt joy.
Yes, the text is explicit about this. When the Son of Righteousness arises, there is healing under his wings. His beams convey holy spiritual refreshment through the Spirit, who is titled the Comforter.
Right.
Joy is not an optional accessory to the Christian walk. It's a primary indicator of his presence.
I think about a person who claims to be married, but they live entirely separate from their spouse.
Well, that's a good comparison.
They have the marriage certificate filed away in a drawer somewhere. Legally, under the law, they are married. But there is no actual relationship. They never talk, they never share a meal, they never laugh together, they have no shared intimacy.
Beautiful piece of paper.
Right, they are satisfied with just the legal document. Are we doing that with our faith? Are we settling for a legal status of justification without the actual joy of the relationship?
Owen has a devastating phrase for that exact scenario. He says, religion without these joyful experiences is a dead carcass without an animating soul.
A dead carcass. Yikes.
He is addressing the massive problem of careless profession. Many people hold on to an outward profession of faith. As long as they can perform the outward duties, showing up on Sunday, putting money in the plate, avoiding scandalous sins, they are completely grouped, regardless of these internal privileges.
They just want to check the boxes and get on with their week.
And in doing so, they deceive themselves. They try to reconcile worldly satisfaction with spiritual peace. They want the comforts of the gospel while maintaining their careless habits and worldly affections.
But Owen insists it won't work.
No, without the diligent, conscious exercise of obedience and contemplation, we shall never enjoy the grace of consolation.
But there are people, even within the church, who look at this kind of intense, joyful religious experience and they roll their eyes. They think it's just emotionalism. The text actually mentions profane scoffers.
Yes. Owen directs a sharp historical critique at those who mock spiritual joys. These scoffers dismiss these consolations as distempered fancies or mere imaginations.
Yeah, like it's all in your head.
They claim it is a psychological trick weak-minded people play on themselves.
They reduce it to an endorphin rush from singing a sad song in a dark room.
Precisely. But Owen argues that by doing so, they deny the clear, repeated teachings of Scripture. They deny the witnessing of the Spirit. They deny the shedding abroad of God's love in our hearts, which Paul talks about in Romans.
It's a huge theological error.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By stripping away all real internal intercourse between the person of Christ and the believer, these scoffers reduce religion to an outward show, a pageantry fit for a stage, rather than the temple of God in the minds of men.
A stage play. That is a brutal assessment. Just actors reciting lines with no reality behind it, wearing costumes of piety.
Right.
But the text argues these joys are undeniably real, evidenced by centuries of history.
It brings up the martyrs to prove this point. This is not abstract theory. Multitudes of faithful martyrs who endured terrible, unimaginable torments were sustained by this exact joy.
Wow.
They gave testimony to it in their last moments. You can't attribute a person singing hymns while burning at the stake to a distempered fancy or a fleeting emotional rush.
No, you really can't.
It requires a substantive, supernatural reality holding them up.
And the text brings in Mark chapter 10 and Hebrews chapter 10 to show the sheer weight of this joy. It talks about receiving 100-fold recompense.
The internal consolations outbalance all outward afflictions and persecutions. Believers can take joyfully the spoiling of their goods, as Hebrews says, because they have an experience in themselves of a better and lasting substance in heaven.
It outweighs everything.
The joy is so real, so heavy, so dense, that it outweighs the loss of earthly possessions, social standing, or even life itself. It acts as an anchor that holds the ship steady in a hurricane.
So, if we are failing to see Christ, if our grace is withering like a frozen tree, and we have lost the joy and peace of the royal train, whose fault is it?
Right.
We can't just blame the weather. Owen doesn't let us off the hook. He argues that the blame lies squarely with us and our adversaries.
He categorizes the obstructions to our spiritual sight very methodically. There are three distinct categories of blindness mentioned in the text.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, obstinate unbelievers who are blinded by the god of this world, as seen in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Satan makes it impossible for them to behold anything of the glory of Christ.
But the text explicitly says, "Of these we do not speak." He moves past them quickly because his audience is the church.
Right. The second category is the corrupt natural darkness present in all men. By nature, we cannot discern this glory. The natural man receives not the things of the Spirit of God.
They are foolishness to him.
Yes, even those sitting in the pews, hearing the word preached continually, might see no beauty in Christ because their minds are filled with prejudices and flesh-driven lusts.
But then we get to the third category, which is where the target audience lives and where the conviction really hits.
Yes, the believers in whom this evil is only partially cured in this life. Faith enlightens the eyes of the understanding, but the cure is not complete until heaven. There are remainders of corrupted nature still living within us.
The text describes this as the clutter of the mind, the remainder of lusts and corruptions. It uses the term carnal affections.
Which means?
To translate that to modern ears, we're talking about flesh-driven desires, the love of the world, relentless cares about our status, and sensual inclinations. These things clog the mental machinery.
The psychological insight here is, well, it's striking. When any one sin has a perplexing prevalency in the mind, faith is weakened. The mind becomes unsteady, constantly distracted and diverted with vain thoughts and imaginations.
You just can't focus.
You might have the theological knowledge, but when you try to actually sit down and meditate on Christ, everything is dark and confused because your mind is highly unstable.
I have to ask about that line between normal life and what Owen calls inordinate affections. We all have jobs, we have mortgages, we have to feed our families, we have to care about the world to some extent to function in society.
Sure.
How do we differentiate between normal daily responsibilities and these inordinate affections that block our spiritual sight?
Owen provides a brilliant psychological metric for this. He
Mhm.
points out that true spiritual sight produces love, and love dictates thought.
Love dictates thought. That is a massive aha moment in this text. We need to unpack that.
Think about human relationships.
Yeah.
If you truly love someone, you think about them. They occupy your mental space naturally.
Yeah, that's true.
When you wake up, your mind drifts to them. When you have a quiet moment on your commute, you wonder how their day is going. Owen applies this directly to our relationship with Christ.
Oh, wow.
If a person claims to love him, but their mind has absolutely no room for sedate meditations on him because it is entirely cumbered with earthly cares, their view of his glory is obstructed. According to the proportion that earthly or fleshly affections fill the head and heart with a multitude of thoughts, faith is obstructed in its work.
So let's talk about the modern mental pie chart.
Okay, I have the pie chart.
If my mental pie chart is 99% stock market worries, sports statistics, political outrage, and whatever is trending on social media, and maybe 1% is a rushed, half-awake prayer before dinner, my affections are clearly out of proportion.
They absolutely are.
Love dictates thought. If I am not thinking about him, I do not love him as much as I claim to. My spiritual light is being darkened by the steam of my own disordered passions.
That is the internal sabotage.
Yeah.
Our own minds betraying us. But the text also outlines external sabotage from a very real enemy. Satan's original design is to blind the eyes of men. And even when God overpowers him and shines light into a believer's heart at conversion, Satan doesn't just pack up and leave.
Right.
He uses two primary tactics to trouble and darken the minds of believers, keeping them from seeing the glory.
Let's walk through those. Tactic 1. Fiery darts.
Yes, Satan uses serpentine subtlety to cast in fiery darts that cause fears, doubts, and crushing despondency.
He attacks our assurance.
He tries to convince believers that they are rejected, that Christ will not receive them, that their sins are too great or their faith is a sham. He fills them with crippling anxieties about their salvation.
And under the sheer weight of those despondencies, it is impossible to have a clear, joyful view of Christ's glory.
It's hard to look at the beauty of the sun when you're terrified the sky is falling on your head.
You're curled in a fetal position spiritually.
Exactly.
That's the second tactic.
The second tactic is almost the exact opposite, and perhaps far more insidious because it feels good. It's seducing people into careless security and presumption.
Making them comfortable, putting them to sleep at the wheel.
He convinces them they shall be saved by Christ, even though they have no idea how and bear no fruit. They promise peace to themselves without any diligent search.
No self-reflection.
They neglect self-examination entirely. Owen references 2 Corinthians 13, verse 5, "Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves." Satan's goal here is to make people neglect the endeavor of experiencing the grace of the gospel, leading to a ruinous, deadly security.
So you are either paralyzed by panic attacks about your salvation, or you're asleep in a hammock of careless presumption, assuming cultural Christianity is enough.
Both work perfectly for him.
Either way, you are not actively beholding the glory of Christ by faith. You are completely blocked.
That is the tragedy. These obstructions, the internal clutter of our worldly affections, and the external attacks of Satan added to the inherent weakness of faith itself, are why our view of Christ in this world is weak, unsteady, and so easily interrupted.
Which brings us to the great contrast of the entire piece. We have painted a rather stark, realistic, almost exhausting picture of the struggles of faith in this chaotic world.
It's a lot.
The weak eyes, the static on the radio, the frozen winter seasons, the internal clutter of our smartphones and anxieties, the external fiery darts. It sounds like an unwinnable battle.
But then the text shifts.
Yes. We move from the struggle of faith to the reality of sight in heaven, the eternal noon.
This is where the text lifts our eyes to the final resolution. Owen asks us to consider the state of our minds in glory. First, the faculties of our souls will be made perfect.
He quotes Hebrews chapter 12, the spirits of just men made perfect. What does that actually mean for our daily, or rather eternal, experience?
It means we are freed from all the clogs of the flesh. All the physical and mental limitations that currently restrain our operations will be gone.
The clutter is cleared.
The mind will be perfectly purified from all principles of instability, all inclinations to fleshly things. Right now, our bodies fight our spirits. But in glory, even the resurrected body will be entirely subservient to the highest spiritual acts of the mind.
So my physical body will not betray me when I am trying to focus on God. Right now, if I try to pray for an hour, my back hurts, my knees ache, my stomach growls, I get sleepy.
We all do.
The body is a weight dragging the spirit down. But in glory, the body actually acts as an amplifier for the spiritual act instead of hindering it.
That is the clear implication. The essential faculties of our souls are currently not able to constantly abide in the contemplation of glory. We are forced to turn away, just like we turn our physical watering eyes away from the sun.
Right.
But in that perfect state, with a glorified body and a perfected mind, we will be able to behold and delight in this immense glory constantly, with eternal satisfaction.
I think of it like this. Right now, faith is like sitting in a moving car during a torrential rainstorm, trying to look out a scratched, foggy window at a mountain range. You can make out the vague shapes of the mountains outside. You know theoretically they are beautiful, but it's a massive strain to see them. Your eyes hurt from trying to focus through the grime.
Yeah.
Heaven is like the car stopping, the door opening, and you stepping out on a crisp, clear, cloudless day with absolute 20/20 vision. Nothing between you and the object.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. The text describes this as a direct comprehension of his glory. It is an internal capacity of our glorified minds. We will see him face to face, as he is.
Just breathtaking.
And here's a crucial psychological point Owen makes about eternity. There will be satisfaction without satiety.
Satisfaction without getting bored.
Yes. He references Psalm 17, verse 15. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. Human nature typically gets tired of things.
We really do.
Familiarity breeds contempt, or at least apathy. Even the most beautiful song gets old if you listen to it on repeat for a week. The most delicious, decadent meal makes you sick if you eat too much of it. We are finite creatures who exhaust the capacity of finite things. But in heaven, the mind is satisfied in beholding God forevermore, without any weariness, indisposition, or boredom.
He brings in the four living creatures from Revelation chapter 4 to illustrate this. They rest not day and night, saying, Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty.
And they never get tired.
They are continually exercised in admiration and praise without ever needing a break and without ever losing the absolute thrill of the words.
Because the object of their contemplation is infinite, and their capacity to enjoy it has been made perfect. You cannot exhaust an infinite God. Furthermore, there will be no vicissitudes in heaven.
No changing seasons, no static on the radio dropping the signal.
Christ will never, on any occasion, so much as for one split second, withdraw himself. In this world, our spiritual light has seasons. Sometimes it is bright as the sun, warming our leaves. Sometimes it is dim like the moon, which gives slight relief in the dark night of trials. We live under a constant, exhausting cycle of light and darkness, views of Christ, and the painful loss of him.
But the New Jerusalem has no need of the sun or the moon.
Because the glory of God enlightens it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. It is a perpetual, uninterrupted presence. Owen uses a phrase that is incredibly poetic for a Puritan. He calls it, always one noon of light and glory.
Always one noon. I love that phrasing. No shadows getting longer, no impending darkness creeping in at the edges, no dread of the coming night. Just the absolute peak of brightness, permanently sustained.
Yes.
And along with that constant light comes the absolute finality of our triumph over enemies.
Yes, this vision will not be weakened by any internal defects or external assaults. There will be no lingering doubts, no irrational fears, no disturbing fiery darts from Satan.
It's over.
Every inclination in our soul will eternally lead us to contemplate his glory with delight.
The text says, "The mouth of iniquity shall be stopped forever, and the voice of the self-avenger shall be heard no more."
A powerful promise.
The internal accuser that whispers you are not good enough, the external tempter trying to put you to sleep, all silenced completely, the sheer relief of that alone is staggering.
It is the ultimate state of blessedness. It is the moment when all the faculties of the soul can, without any internal weakness or external hindrance, exercise their most perfect operations on the most perfect object.
This has been a massive discussion. We have covered a vast amount of ground today. We started by acknowledging the inherent frustrating weakness of our faith, the weak eyes struggling to look at the burning sun.
We did.
We investigated the difficult reality that Christ sometimes intentionally withdraws his presence to wake us up from our spiritual laziness when we get busy here and there.
Yep, the alarm clock.
We mapped out the symptoms of that absence, the withering of our graces in the spiritual winter, the temptation to substitute physical images and emotional hits for true spiritual contemplation, and the devastating loss of those royal consolations of joy and peace.
We also identified the culprits. The clutter of our own minds, our flesh-driven desires for the world, the mental pie chart that leaves no room for love, and the active sabotage of Satan through fiery darts of panic and the seduction of careless security.
But we ended on our brilliant high note, the eternal noon. The promise of a perfected mind, freed from the heavy clogs of the flesh, able to gaze upon the glory of Christ continually without weariness, without interruption, without boredom, and without any shadows of doubt.
It's an incredible hope.
It is the vast, striking difference between the unsteady, easily interrupted sight of faith we have now in the rainstorm and the perfect, invariable sight waiting for us outside the car in glory.
And as Owen concludes in the text, whenever we manage to attain even a comfortable, refreshing view of Christ's glory by faith in this life, when the radio signal comes in clear for just a moment, it should make us long intensely for that perfect, abiding, invariable sight to come.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We mentioned those martyrs earlier.
We did.
Men and women who endured the absolute worst torments imaginable, sustained only by the fleeting, imperfect glimpses of Christ's glory they could catch through the foggy window of faith in a chaotic, violent world.
Right.
If those weak, interrupted glimpses were enough to give them joy while facing the flames, what will the unfiltered, unbroken sight of that exact same glory feel like in the first 5 seconds of eternity?
That's a thought to carry with you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes fixed on the light.